4 really was about the fear of Black Americans, and I apologize for the typo on the screen, participation in government, and in particular, how the election of President Obama sparked that fear. And so not only fear of Black Americans participating in government, but also the fear of a Black American as president of the United States. And in chapter 5, we had how white nationalist or white nationalism was the underpinning of the Trump presidency. And so various things that Trump did that was white supremacy in action, or actions that gave white supremacist the lacking the word, blanking on the word I want to use, the gave them a window and gave them strength and gave them encouragement. And then in chapter 6 we have this begins part 2 of the book, and so Steve Phillips unveils the Liberation Battle Plan for us progressives to emulate, and it's a 4-step plan that is not like you can't have one without the other. You need to have all 4, and they can happen in a certain order, but all 4 have to be present. And those 4 steps are investing in level 5 leaders, building strong civic engagement organizations, developing detailed data-driven plans, and playing the long game. And so he gave us a little introduction into that, and we'll kind of dive into that with some of our questions tonight. But then he will give us specific examples of states that have this battle plan and are operating under that, and showing the success and showing their work at a detailed level. So we'll get more into that. So before we get started with the discussion questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And now I can see all of you, which makes me happy. So, we are going to enable captions, and I should have done that earlier. Boom. So captions are turned on, and hopefully you can see those on your screen. But I also wanted to take a moment to just shout out some of my team members. Jamel is unable to be with us tonight for a work commitment, so he sends his regards. But do want to give a shout out to Robin, who will be assisting us this evening, and then also to Peg and Hannah for also being a part of our team. And I don't think if I missed someone else, apologies, but appreciate the work that they all do to help make this possible. So, let's get started with a poll question. And we're going to do a poll question here through Zoom. And so you should see it on your, I don't know how it pops up on Zoom, but the question is your state currently making it harder to vote? And we kind of wanted to start it off with that question because in chapter 4, as Phillips talks about how white supremacist Americans became fearful of the election of Barack Obama, one of the things that they did and how they ruthlessly rewrote their laws was to make voting harder. And so we do also know, though, that is still part of their plan and things that they are doing. So got 62% or 70% of participants who have responded so far. I'm going to give folks about 10 more seconds. We're up to 82%. And I know I can't vote since I'm a co-host. All right, 5 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. So I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. So 30 respondents, 21 out of 30, so that's 70%, are currently in a state that is making it harder to vote. So, and if I could vote, I would raise my hand up because, yeah, we're initiating voter ID, which was a constitutional amendment. So, but they're making it really hard by like saying if you vote by mail, you have to have it notarized to vote by mail. So they're going beyond voter ID. All right. Gonna stop sharing there. And Robin, if you would put our very first discussion question into the chat. Question 1. So Phillips writes, meaning the challenge of democracy has always required organizations that can cultivate and channel people's passion and resources through vehicles of collective action and overcome structural segregation to generate a sense of collective belonging. What are effective strategies to organize in ways that meet these goals? And if you can, share an example of when you were a part of a group or organization that turned passion into successful action through an organized process. Or share an example where the passion sputtered due to lack of organization. And I'm a teacher. So I understand sometimes we need time to process. And 2, I'm okay with a little bit of quiet. But we got 2 hands raised. So Alan, take it away after you accept.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, during the 2020 election, in the community where I live in Florida, it's called Fishhawk, and a group of people about a year before the election, created just a Facebook and site called Flock, Fishhawk Left of Center, and just to see how many people in the community were like us. And it just began to blossom, and the passion showed. And well, next thing you know, we were doing car caravans, flag waving, got involved. And the more and more we went out, more and more people started seeing us. My wife and another woman in the group created a podcast for the community, and they invited. It amazes me that you can invite people, well-known people, and they'll reply and they'll get on a podcast. Like a lot of our local candidates, if you remember Alexander Vinman, his wife actually came on, um, and the Anna Escamante and a number of other people from all over Florida, LGBTQ group from St. Pete. And it was a totally disorganized show, but it really hit people, and it got more and more people involved, and it was really good. In answer to the second question, though, how it sputtered is it got absolutely no support from the Florida Democratic Party, and we turned Fishhawk blue in the 2020 election and never got recognized for it. And so in 2022, nobody came out. So this goes to show you there's success. And then unless it's organized, and I know you'll get into organization soon, it will sputter out.
Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for taking that action. And one thing that really stuck out is when you ask people, they'll come, they'll show up. Whether it's people of people that you already know, and then people who you don't. But that's the key. In any organizing, you have to ask. If there's no ask in organizing, you will never grow. You have to give them something tangible to do and to be a part of. So really like that. Thank you, Alan. Alexi, I'm going to have you turn your mic on and you can share your story and experience.
Hello, everybody. I'm a part of a sorority, and we are very active in this effort. As a matter of fact, last year and it's an ongoing thing, but we have what we call Soar to the Polls. And so what we do is all across the country, the sorority also partners with When We All Vote. And so we do all kinds of activities surrounding voter registration, towards getting people to go out and vote early, and have parties and just different things like that. And so we also are really big to partner with other organizations. So also where I work, YWCA, we also partner and do the same thing. So we have these collaborations with all these different organizations, League of Women Voters and all kind of other organizations. And we try to get as many people as possible involved. And we all partner to hold these events. And so that collective effort allows for us to get the word out to a whole lot more people, and to also be very strategic in the locations where we hold them, and also to be strategic in the way that we educate, because we also not only we don't feel it's enough to register voters, but we also educate voters on how to vote, when the deadlines are, where to vote, and all of that. So that's I feel like it's a very effective way of getting people out.
Thank you, Alexi. And I love that I wrote down collaboration, because collaboration is so key. But if I can, if you're willing, can I follow up with a question? You
Sure.
mentioned the word strategic, and I aware of what and here in Omaha, sororities, what they are doing to help turn out the vote. But you kind of mentioned strategic locations and whatnot. Like, could you maybe share like what was part of that strategy? And yes, it's related to your local community, but just kind of wanted to hear a little more on that.
Yes. Well, first of all, the YWCA is located downtown. We used to have our voting location our early voting location used to be downtown. And so that was really strategic, but we also had our event at the early voting location, so that we partner with another organization who were able to get the DJ, the food, and all of that. And so people would come and have fun and then go vote. So that was really part of the strategic. We also did a voting location at the library in the inner city, because what happens is a lot of times certain populations don't fill their vote counts. And so we wanted to let people know that their vote counted. And we also did at the library, because after school, when people are coming in and bringing their kids in, and we also wanted to target young people, because young people are the future too. And they also, we wanted to start teaching young people early how important it is to vote. And so we had kids activities and gift bags, and then we gave on the gift bag, we put a sticker on it where you could go to a QR code and be able to register to vote. So we told them to take it to their parents and their family members. So we just had a whole lot of different kind of strategic points where we tried to hit to cover a lot of different areas where people who normally won't show up, so that we could get them to show up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Love the DJ idea. And we all know if there's food, people come.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes,
so
we had
much.
lots of food.
And love the focus on youth. And while they may not be able to vote, youth know people who can vote. And I think that's an important thing too. So great work there. Mary, we're going to have you turn your mic on and go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I recently worked with the Stacey Abrams Fair Fight group to not only register voters, but to motivate, help people believe that they do count in the effort to turn Georgia blue and remain blue. And I also worked on Senator Warnock reelection campaign. The same thing of calling voters, animating voters to get in there and vote, and don't forget, and also use Spanish skills to reach out to Spanish speaking voters. And her success was because of her diversification and reaching out not only to young, but to all communities of color. That included Hispanics, African American, Southeast Asian, all communities. And so her diversity, even though she didn't win for governor, also worked on her governor campaign to learn more techniques and communicate with people that, I'm from LA, so Georgia's people are the same everywhere if you treat them the same and open up in conversation and care about their engagement.
Yes, showing that you care about engagement. And I liked how you mentioned, I know some folks who worked for the Warnock campaign and mentioning how a lot of times information was produced in numerous languages. And so love that piece. That is a critical piece. If we want to build a multiracial democracy, we have to be willing to engage with them in a way that is comfortable, because many of them will know English, but when you show that, hey, we value your language and your culture and your community, and that's a huge thing. So love that. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Hannah, go ahead.
Okay, hi. Well, I'm a mentor with Fair Fight Action, which is Stacy's organization. And I'm involved in a lot of areas, and some of the things we do, I can't really talk about it because it's proprietary. But, and I also work the Democratic Voter Protection Hotline in Georgia, which is one of the most successful ones in the country. I'm an agent for that line, and that's something we maintain year round. It's not just, it's all the time, and we keep that going. But I think the other thing, when I was listening to him and he was talking about the things that we were doing here in Georgia, and we've been fairly successful. The thing that has helped us where I live in South DeKalb County, which is predominantly Black, where I am, it's the highest Black population outside of the city of Atlanta proper. And we're the county that in both elections that were hotly contested, that swung the vote so that Georgia could become blue. And the thing that helped us is that we have a strong committee. The DeKalb County Democratic Committee is very strong here. I'm a precinct captain and a post seat holder on our committee, and we have a coordinated committee. When we work with the state Democratic Party, you have to establish strong relationships with all of the committees across your state. And so the people who run the DeKalb Dems worked with Leader Abrams and some other politically connected people, and they put tentacles out in all 159 counties. And, like I had a spreadsheet with all 159 counties. I had the names of the people who headed up the voter registration office. We had phone numbers. We knew who the people, it was just a lot of data. When he mentioned that in the book, I was thinking about, all the nights my husband was like, are you ever going to come to bed? So, but it is a matter of, you have to be strategic. You have to have a lot of data, and you have to be willing to give up a significant portion of your life to make these things happen. And that's what we have in Georgia. And I'm really proud of the DeKalb Dems, because they're like the hardest working Democrats I've ever worked with. They just make it happen. And I think Stacy's responsible for that.
Thank you, Hannah. And you know, you mentioned precinct captain, and that just made me think of the root of grassroots organizing. It starts with your neighborhood. And so you know, sometimes we can think, oh, grassroots organizing throughout the city or throughout the county. No, it literally starts with your neighbors, with the people who live on your block. And so I love that. So yeah. Let's move on to question number 2. And apologize because we just got an email of someone wanting the link. And so I'm sending that, and let's do question number 2. Robin, go ahead and put that in the chat if you will. And question 2. So, and you know, and I think Jane, I think you kind of put this question in response to when a participant was sharing about their work. You know, how do you determine a mission that is broad enough to have appeal, but focused enough to have an impact? And then I'm also going to throw in number 3. You know, once an organization has determined its mission statement, how does it decide what types of data it should be collecting? How does it determine effective strategies for data collection? Because 2 and 3 kind of deal with that, you know, mission per se. And so, yeah, looking for like, maybe people have examples of true stories they can share, you know, of organizing and determining a mission and, you know, making it broad enough, but also making it focused. All right, Peg, go ahead.
Thanks, Wes. I think it's largely individual in terms of determining the breadth and depth of an agency's mission statement. And, you know, what I may see as broad enough, you may see as too narrow or way too broad. But nevertheless, it being an individual, you know, determination to some extent. And we may all collectively have the same understanding of an agency's mission statement, whatever agency for whatever purpose. But then when it comes to collecting data, I think it helps to determine if the agency has some action steps focused around that mission, or if there are some events or situations or platforms that the agency stands for, and then collect data that are related to those kind of subtopics or sub-steps, because then that kind of all helps to build the picture of here's the mission, here's the objectives of the mission, and here's the data to show how we are accomplishing or working to accomplish this mission.
Appreciate it. And as you were sharing, Peg, I'm thinking of what my county party is currently doing as we develop a strategic plan. Well, whatever our mission is, there better be concrete action steps that relate back to that strategic plan mission. So, yeah, thank you. Felita.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for letting me answer this question. I think truly that this question first starts with the people. It's kind of like writing a book without the title. You tend to understand the people, what they need, and you build the mission as an integrity statement that has to do with what the people are after, what they're focused on, what their passion is about. And the passion itself is really the impact. So for me, when I deal with people and I work with different groups and organizations, it's the people and how they feel and what they want to do first. And then we tend to put structure around that. So to me, it would be kind of like writing a book. It's the people first and then situating the structure around that.
Apologize for the delay there, but I was writing that down. Listen to the people first. Really love that, because we probably all know an organization in our communities that had great intentions, thought they were coming in to meet a need, but it truly wasn't a need of the people. And so therefore it's going to fizzle. Anna.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've learned from the organizations that I've been in is that the leadership brings what their overall mission is, because generally the person who starts the movement already has a mission statement. Like when Stacy started Fair Fight Action, she already had a mission in her mind. She knew what she wanted to accomplish. Then she set out to gather people around her who shared that goal, had the same goal. But then I think the thing that she did with Fair Fight, which is why I love the organization, is we broke it down into like cubicles. I guess I'll call them cubicles. There's voter registration, but voter registration involves a lot beyond just getting people registered to vote. So you take that's one piece, and you get a group of people who are interested in that, and you get them working on that. And then you look at the other part of like going down and under the Gold Dome and working with the Democratic Legislature Committee. That's another part that we did. So you have to keep breaking it down and refining it until you have enough little pods that everybody is working toward the mission, but you're not trying to manage all these people. And I think that's the strategic part of it. And I think that's why Fair Fight works so well, because it is targeted. And One Georgia works so well because we have a lot of different people with a lot of different skill sets taking on different parts of our overall mission statement. And I just think that's helpful to an organization.
Appreciate that, Hannah. And yes, you have to be very strategic. But then also recognizing, and what I heard when you spoke, is recognizing the different skill sets and the different passions that people have, and then allowing them to get into that place within the mission to do that. I think is very important and effective. And I also just want to acknowledge, Jane put in the chat, my head is swimming. There are so many needs. And so let's just do, this is a very informal Zoom poll. I don't have the question, put so that it can be sent out to you in Zoom, but let's all you can raise your Zoom hands, do a thumbs up reaction or something. How many of you feel like Jane? Your head is swimming. There are so many needs. You could respond in the chat, put a thumbs up on there, but just would like to see how people respond to that comment. All right, seeing some yeses in the chat, seeing thumb reactions going up. I personally can relate to that here in Nebraska. And we don't get the press coverage that like I was getting in Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, they want to get rid of the State Board of Education. And obviously there's a lot of transphobic bills, and I haven't heard of one state that requires you to notarize your vote by mail ballot. that was a new thing to me. So we have a lot going on here, and I've literally had to tell myself and others that, like, I mean, as a member of the LGBTQ community, you cannot be a gay person and not care about trans rights. And if you are someone who doesn't, then I really have a lack of respect for you as part of that community. But with that, like, there's so much going on in education, like that's my number one focus right now. And then if I have time, then I go to LGBTQ plus issues, and then I go to the voting rights issues. And I recognize there's privilege in my own personal decisions, but otherwise I get overwhelmed and then I crash and I'm not doing anything. So anyone have other thoughts just on that, on how you determine needs, you know, how you're personally handling that, because that's a real thing. And if anyone has any advice or thoughts, or how their organization or how they're personally handling that. But I also do want to stress I am a white cisgender gay male, so there's privilege in my ability to do that. So Robin, go ahead.
I think in some regards, we have to be cognizant of both the overlap and the differences, because it makes me think of some of the disconnect with Bernie Sanders' campaign. His general stance, especially around addressing issues of race, was that if we address class, that it would automatically encompass race. And in some cases, we do have what is called the curb effect, where curbs were created to help people using strollers and or wheelchairs, but it ended up being beneficial to so many other parts of society. So in some cases, we do have the curb effect, where overlapping needs can help multiple groups, but we do have disparate needs. And when those times do happen, if we aren't careful to actually understand how those needs need to be met differently, and we make assumptions without actually letting people who live those experiences tell you how those are different, I think that's kind of what causes some of the division and makes it feel overwhelming, because we get pushback on wanting to understand that this kind of one size fits all doesn't always work. But sometimes we can have a one size fits most solution A, and then we also have a solution B for those who solution A doesn't work.
Thank you, Robin. Myra put in the chat, this is where self-care is important. And that is so true. And what that looks like individual to individual is different. Anyone else on how they juggle the complexity and diversity of issues that are pressing? Oh, Rudy, Rest is Resistance. Yes, that is a book. I'm aware of it. I have not personally read it, but yeah. We'll be sure to share that in the follow-up guide as well. All right, Robin, go ahead.
Just answering your other question, I think we also have to be careful about how outside groups, or I guess as Jamel would call them, anti-progressives, will try to use our differences to pit us against each other. Just recently, we saw a meme going around that said that drag is to women what blackface is to Black people. And we were kind of looking around like nobody Black said that. It's using, and this happens a lot where people who don't have the interest of Black Americans or the LGBTQ community will use the marginalization of one group to try to either downplay the marginalization of another or use it to make a false comparison that it in a way that is insensitive to another, and it creates division where there previously was none. So I think that's something that we have to be careful about. And kind of like when we were talking last week, we need to work amongst ourselves to understand the beauty in our diversity as progressives so that we can combat when those mechanisms are attempted to use to divide us.
Thank you for raising that point, Robin. Appreciate that. And as you wrapped up, Steve put in the chat, the diversity and complexity of it gives me paralysis. I need to learn how to initiate city council, my state legislature, election monitors. How did some of you all originally get seriously active? And so I think that's a great question, and would love for folks to respond to Steve's question there in the chat and offer your ideas. And if anyone would like to verbally reply to that, but I will say my quick answer is start local. Start local, even if it means just going to a city council meeting or a school board meeting. Go ahead, Jane.
Well, exactly, Wes. So I'm sort of a baby at stepping out. I spent the last few years just kind of fomenting at home on my couch in front of the television and to my friends, but went to a school board meeting. It's intimidating, and it's also, I have to watch myself because it's very emotionally stirring for me. And also just recently I did join a group on the, we descended upon the Texas Capitol and were organized against the extreme gun lack of regulations that they have here. And we got to talk to legislators, and I was nervous as all get out, but gosh, it was worth it. So, and those little things like that, I feel like they were little, but it felt good.
Appreciate it, Jane. Belita, and then Jenna.
You know, you're exactly right, Wes. The first thing I start doing was going to the meetings. My Mondays were council meeting, school board meeting, Summit County Council meeting. I mean, I just went to meetings and I had an open mind and I just absorbed. And I learned that our local government really has more to do with my day-to-day than federal government. So that was something that, and then I also learned that when I had questions or people had disconnects, the answers were in these meetings with these real people. So, and then I became a bridge that wanted to bridge all this together and say, hey, come over here and do this, talk to this person. So it all started with local meetings and attending and just absorbing.
Appreciate it. Go ahead, Jenna. I'm sending you ask to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, hi. This is my first time coming to this, and I really
Welcome.
like. Thank you. This may sound a little crazy, but I think it's important to start where you do social activities, in particular where you eat. You should find a connection to places where your Democratic representatives may have highlighted them as a successful small business, and or who host events and activities for engagement with Democratic candidates, because I think sometimes we do a disservice if, and I get it if you don't know where you're eating, but if you are spending your personal time in places that that are democratically friendly, I think that's really important these days, because you could be using your money, having conversations in places that may not be democratic friendly or around the issues that are important to you. I think that's one way of really supporting people who get it. I'm in a relatively democratic friendly state. I'm in Maryland. But we did have a Republican governor for 2 terms, and I guess he was okay. But my point is, I think it's important to. I recently I went to a Starbucks, and the Starbucks had on it, "We're going to have a free coffee meetup with a local Democratic elected official." I thought that was really cool. I said, "Oh, I think I have to start using this Starbucks as opposed to another one, because at least they're advertising that they're trying to get the community and the more involved in issues that are important." So I'll leave it at that. And I see some of the comments. Thank you. I agree. Bookstores are a good example too.
Yeah. Yeah, expect, and like I just think when you're new to a community, if you moved, like just be aware when you're going to establishments. They likely will let you know if it's a place that matches your political and personal values. And then from there, not only can you connect to ways to engage, but you'll probably maybe meet someone and spark a conversation with those who are like-minded as well. So thank you for raising that. Appreciate it. Beulah, it is good to see your name. A familiar name. Go ahead and share.
I didn't know how far back you were going in regards to, because I thought I understood you say, when did we start our political journeys? Is that what you referred your question that you were posing?
Yeah, like how did you get started, or do you have suggestions for individuals who are looking to, like, do they start with a national campaign? Do they get involved in state stuff? Or how would you encourage someone as they try to decide where to get involved, because there's so much going on and it can be hard.
For myself, I got involved on even though it might not be seem like political, it was as far back as high school. I'm from a predominantly white small community in Tennessee, and we had the tendency of I was the first president for a class president at my high school, my freshman year in high school. Um, Now I thought that was interesting that here I was, everybody was new that's in the freshman class, and campaigning to be the freshman class president. So I started my journey then, and then having to speak harshly to teachers when we had we call it the annual black and white fight uh, at the school, and telling teachers that they were not paying attention to the African American students who were involved with the fights. It seemed like that the white students were fighting. I considered them fighting unfair. Uh, Now today, but the teachers went to their aid instead of the black students' aid. It's that happened annually from the time that we had integration in 1968, going to a predominantly white school, and then in college, experiencing getting involved politically whenever we had voted for a first African-American football queen, and she was the queen the day, and then the next day we come back and she wasn't queen anymore. So that started a lot of discussion and movement on the college campus. And then the last thing, when I was working in higher education, seeing the students take over the computer lab, the only computer lab on campus, doing final exams to push through them taking away some of the things as related to what the African American students wanted on this predominantly, well, students call it PWI, predominantly white institution. Seeing them go before the Senate or the Congress in Nashville, talking intelligently about the way that they were being treated at this predominantly white institution. And now seeing the fight that the president for Tennessee State having to put up with, I call them bullies, with the comptroller's office, the governor of our state. They were looking for a way to get into the higher education. Yet that particular institution is the only land grant institution we have in the state of Tennessee, besides the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. And they are the problem. The state is the problem because the university has not gotten the same political clout and or financial support as the University of Tennessee has. Although it was designated as they had the land grant, and most states have in the South particularly land grant institutions that have one that's historically Black and one that is predominantly white. Here in Tennessee, that was the University of Tennessee and Tennessee State.
Gotcha.
So the political action now has really brought up the alumni as well as the students to be standing in conjunction with each other in regards to our state. And the other thing that I think that my granddaughter, she wanted to run for school president whenever she was in the 5th grade. So I would say that going back that far is a good place to start, since they don't teach civics in school anymore as much. But that is a good place to start in helping our young people understand the woes of our government and the things that they're trying to take away from our individuals now, like Medicaid and food stamps. They may not take them away, but lessen. Let me say that we would lessen, because I'm sure they won't just come through and just wipe it out totally. That they'll make it more of a challenge to get than it has in the past.
Well, I appreciate that, Bila. And as you kind of shared your story, there's a theme: education. And so I feel like that is a very easy for folks, if you want to get involved, your local school, or investing in the youth and helping amplify their desires. So appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. All right, so let's move on. This was Robin and I actually added this question to the reader's guide, like literally 2 minutes before letting folks into the Zoom room. And so Robin, I actually got it copied and paste. The formatting's a little wonky, but I'm gonna still do it. So in the book, we're given 2 sets of characteristics for strong leaders, and this was really in chapter 6. Business leaders are described as having personal humility and indomitable will. In a study of the civil rights movement, effective leaders were described as those who engage in organization building, mobilizing, formulation of tactics, and strategy and articulation of a movement's purpose and goals to participate in the larger society. So we want to just hear from you, and we're not going to have anyone share, but reply in the chat. Who are local leaders in your area and in your community, because this could be a really cool thing. So then we can decide, and can learn more about those leaders that you know of. So yeah, who are some folks in your community, effective leaders in your area? Pop their names in the chat. All right, so got a few answers in there, which is kind of cool to see. I'm just trying to very nice. So there's some folks there. I put a few for my community. Local NAACP. Very cool. I'm excited to save this chat and then go and do a little more research, but appreciate you responding to that. And so number 5, is, oh gosh, okay, we got 30 minutes. So number 5, it could be argued that our most recent "what do we do" moment was during the second half of 2020 with the election approaching. What were some things that you decided to do in your personal life to organize, to mobilize, and to affect change? What were some effective actions that you observed locally at the state level and at the national level that leaders did that resonated with you? So kind of a reflection on 2020 on a personal note, and then also what you saw and observed within your local communities. It's good to see some real local, even like county commissioner. That's cool. And we'll get the question into the chat. So what did you do in 2020 to mobilize and affect change? And what's some things that you saw happen locally, statewide, or even nationwide that you liked and want to bring attention to? Hannah put in the chat, works with Black Men Vote. Go ahead, Robin.
I feel like, and this is just anecdotal evidence and personal observation, but I feel like in 2020, a lot of people realized just the breadth of information that they did not know, the amount of perspectives that they didn't understand, and a lot of people mobilized to try to correct that, try to engage with organizations focused on, one, learning and also about having hard conversations, because I think that was another thing that we recognized in 2020. Like a lot of people of color realized prior to that that having hard conversations with white people were at times almost a non-starter because we would be shut down, and a lot of organizations built up around that to try to change that. And it kind of lays the groundwork for other organizing, because how do you be effective at organizing for a multiracial coalition if you can't even have a conversation with the people that you are organizing with?
Sorry, I had to run to the restroom. Go ahead, Jenna.
I was gonna say, I put in the chat, even though I live in a very democratic county and state, we still push to get a lot of people to vote, and it showed an increase in numbers of people voting, but then also volunteering to get out to vote in places that may be around you that are not necessarily as dominant of voting democratically. So I want to give an example of I live in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Southern Maryland, and Northern Virginia. And there was a time that Northern Virginia was not, in certain places, were not as heavily democratic. I went to an event last Friday, and I was so shocked to see positively how democratic this area of Falls Church, Virginia had become, because I remember 20 years ago, even 25, 20 years ago, it wasn't that progressive. And so it was an example of, it may not look like it now, but over the course of time and just doing whatever you can do, you can begin to see over months, years. Yes, Fairfax County has a great Dem Party. Yes, but it wasn't always that way. But it's so good to see it now, because I feel like after decades of plugging away at it, we really have a strong county there. And so I just wanted to say that sometimes you may feel disillusioned, but just keep working at it. And over the course of time, if you love your neighborhood and your community, that, things can change.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Jenna. And there is a lot happening in the chat, so make sure, I know it can be hard listening and seeing what's going on in the chat, but there is some good things there that people saw. So we are at 8:10, which is good because we got about 3 more questions. And I realized I skipped one, so kind of gonna go back to that one because there's 2 questions that kind of relate to that one. So Phillips references, and I am sorry, I don't know.
That just got misnumbered when we were trying to
Okay.
insert that other one. That one's kind of the intro to 5, so it's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah. So thank you, Robin. And I don't know why, but it's not formatting well when I copy from the Google Doc. But Phillips references the 2021 book, Prisms of the People, and asserts that the core purpose of the book was to discover the strategic choices that leaders make in response to uncertain moments that evoke the question, what do we do? And so now I got to...
Yep, so that's, I think you just reread 5.
Yes. And so number 7, I think, in the document.
Yeah, I'll put 6 in the chat.
Okay. Thank you. Has anyone read Prisms of the People or heard of the book? Because I have not heard of that one. Seen some folks kind of shake their head no. Thank you, Robin. And so Philip references a prism as a tool to transform political energy from one form to another. As I kind of mentioned in our introduction, Building Bridges for America transformed political energy in support of Pete Buttigieg into, well, this book club and a grassroots organization network system. And so what are some other necessary political tools, and are they being used effectively? And as you think about this question, I'll just talk a little bit on the history of building bridges. So when Building Bridges for America was formed, it honestly, as I think Alan has mentioned, Facebook. And so we just really created a Facebook group that a space for supporters of Pete Buttigieg to just come, because we are passionate about Pete Buttigieg, and then the campaign ended, and of course COVID hit and blah. And so, well, hey, let's just form a Facebook community. But then shortly after, Christy Kelly, who actually lived in Virginia, she's like, yeah, this is cool. We have a space together, but we need to take action. We need to take why we were inspired by Pete and what Pete shared, and then turning that into action in support of, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and then also in our local communities. And so through that, we started a book club right away. We started hosting postcard writing as we watched movies and listened to music. And then we started endorsing candidates that Pete's PAC, supports, but then also organizations like Run for Something, and then other candidates who we've heard about throughout the nation that fit progressive values. And so, and it's slowly to evolve. Now we even give trainings of how for people to do what we did and incorporate it into their community, and also how to have political conversations and other trainings that the Pete campaign did. And so not letting it just stop with the candidate, because if we just stopped it with the candidate, then we were just worshiping a person, idolizing a person. And so turning that into action for us to take, but then also to allow others to come into and join us in support of progressives and progressive policies. So, yeah. But interested to hear if folks have any other things. What are some necessary political tools, that you think makes an effective grassroots organization? And I know we kind of mentioned, strategy earlier, but any other ideas people have or have witnessed? And I know you all know some effective things for grassroots organizations to do because you're a part of them. You're doing them. Go ahead, Peg, and then Robin.
Thanks, Wes. I put this in the chat. We have postcard writings on our local level. And in addition to that, there's a lot of people who go out door to door about getting the vote out. But then our local candidates, our local Democratic candidates, host a Zoom meet and greet. And it could be local to like a municipality, or it could be local as in a state government-based representative. Someone who represents the state of Pennsylvania in my case, but only Pennsylvania at the state level. And I have found those Zoom meet and greets that I've been on are really great opportunities to get to know a candidate in a lot of detail. They're usually smaller than this meeting, in fact. And you listen to the candidate speak for a little while, and you have the opportunity to ask some questions and actually have a discussion with the various candidates. It's not a debate because it's not multiple Democratic candidates and it's not Democrats and Republicans. It's just Democratic candidates. They will host a single Zoom.
Thank you, Peg. I'm writing that down for my county party. Beulah.
I was going to say that one of the things that came out of the pandemic here in regards to the African American community that I'm involved with, um, many of the organizations that came out and formed during the pandemic to that got access to a lot of the monies that came down from the federal government, they couldn't understand why they could not get people of color to come to their events to get the vaccines and so forth and so on. And it's because they weren't associated with those communities. They're not associated with our community. Uh, we have a group that has come together since May of 2020. That now they have vaccinated almost 500,000 people, and they have done better than the health department in getting people to come in because they have their aim, their work has been in a community that the people know who they are. So I think that uh, in our political movement, that we have to send people into neighborhoods and to communities that the people can associate with them. And you can't have the person come with three-piece suit on. That you need to have the person's come in maybe in shorts and tennis shoes as we move into the summer months, and somebody more, I'm going to say more casual, as we approach people, and that people will have the tendency to follow people they feel like they have something in common with.
Great point, Beulah. And as you were saying that, my mind thought of it has to be continual. It cannot be just before an election. If you're a good organizer and organization, it's continual investment and taking time to engage and hear from the community. So. All right. And and I do think too, and some people have said things that are making me think of this, is the pandemic, while certainly created barriers in organizing, but so many things now are done hybrid style. And that is a huge way to embrace hybrid, is a way to draw more people in and make things more accessible. And so that's one encouragement I would offer as well. All right, we got about 10 more minutes, and I want to end 5 minutes early because we have some exciting things to share and an action step for you all to take. So let's skip to number 8, because number 8 kind of goes with our action question that we like to end with our discussions. And so number 8, I think 70% of those who are on the call tonight said that they live in a state that is making it harder to vote. And let's just all be honest, we all live in a state that has taken steps recently that have made it harder to vote, most likely. Except I believe Rudy lives in Minnesota, and Minnesota is pretty darn good about making voting accessible. But if you have lived in a state that has recently made it harder to vote, or you currently are living in a state that is trying to do that, what are some steps or actions you can take to ensure that others can and will vote? What's some strategies you think? Go ahead, Jane.
Looking back at, I wasn't a poll worker, but I was a poll watcher, and just seeing the people come in who didn't understand. In Texas, they have a weird deal where early voting, you can vote anywhere within your district, and then on voting day, you have a certain location, and people didn't understand that. So I think one of the main proponents of getting the vote out is educating the people on what the process is, which is becoming all the more difficult because they're trying to pass new legislation on identification and who can and can't, the redistricting and all of that stuff. So it's going to require continual updating, but also as I'm reading these bills that are going through the legislature, I mean, it's like I come away maybe understanding half of what I just read. So, and if I don't know many people who have the time to spend going through the language and really trying to parse out what that means for them in particular. So maybe we could educate in that way, sort of simplify the language in what's being put out there and let people know.
Thank you, Jane. And I definitely write where to vote, because people are, that is, if you don't know where to vote, you're probably not going to go. So that's a good one. Thank you for starting.
Or they got turned away.
Yep. Appreciate that. Go ahead, Mary.
Simple rules, reminders, dates, the primary, who the issues, the people involved, candidates, familiarity, where to vote, of course, and also there's been a lot of closures of post office, but the list has got to be updated in your local community through your local party. But I think there's a certain demand that we need to make to the national party, the Democratic Party, to have systematic ballot tracks, like in California, where they inform you, did you get your ballot by a certain date? If not, call this number. You actually get postings, updates, texts, register with the ballot tracks. I don't know why this is not available to every single state, but the national party's got to step in and also combat all this voter registration, all these changes that are confusing and meant to confuse voters, to intimidate voters, to discourage voting. Voting is our right. Voting is essential. Voting is part of democracy. And to make those statements into the public, campaigns on TV and social media, the party itself has to be more vocal about these things. Not be reactive, but be proactive.
Very good. Thank you for that, Mary. And I just want to put it in the chat that I really like that Steve mentioned, everyone who votes would call one or more friends and then do it together. I love that. But definitely that personal outreach is probably the number one factor. I've maybe told this story before, but it was literally the last day to register to vote. And I was working my part-time job in retail, and I was asking, the kids, as I call them, hey, are you registered to vote? Blah, blah, blah. Yep. Cool. And wasn't going to, and my shift was wrapping up. And then it's like, oh, I just better ask. And I asked a fellow coworker who is of my age and as a fellow teacher. And I was hesitant because I kind of already thought that they were already, they're in the union, they're a teacher, they're already elected. And it's like, nope, you better ask. And I did. And she came over to me and was like, Wes, I've never voted before. Never. And I was like, well, do you want to? I'm hesitant because I heard it's difficult. And so I literally took my phone out on the clock, oops, and literally got her registered to vote. And then the day of the election, she texted me and she's like, Wes, I don't know who to vote for. Can you send me something? And don't know their political affiliation, how they chose to vote or whatnot. But the fact that they would then come back and ask me, they're, so never be afraid to ask, because you may know someone, could be a friend, and they talk politics, but they don't actually go out and vote. So an encouragement. Jenna, go ahead.
I think it's because of my first one. I'm just so chatty, but I'm just loving this. um, I wanted to say one of the things that the different women groups that I work with have been doing, and then also within my family, which is a lot of extended family, we would go and buy umbrellas and take them to senior citizen complexes and different places so that people who we follow the weather patterns and make sure if it's going to rain on the day of the election day or during days when you can do early voting, that don't make the rain be an excuse. Like, here's a free umbrella. Take the umbrella and go and vote. It may sound crazy, but sometimes people just who have a heart to vote, the weather's not good, they won't go out and vote. So we really try to hone in on that whole weather piece that may stop people from voting.
Awesome. Yeah, and even, with weather, if it's real hot out, like I saw someone put in the chat, having, passing out water bottle, if it's illegal where you live, because not always illegal in all places now. But great, Jenna. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Well, it's 8:27, so I really appreciate that. As I get my screen ready to share the exciting news that, I think some of you are aware of, but maybe not others, I want to put in the chat our final question, and this is an important one. Based on our conversation tonight and this week's reading, what's an action step you are committing to take personally? So reply in the chat of something you're going to do in the next week in regards to our conversation.